A lone tear splashed onto the worn wooden planks of the barn floor as Cassandra Turner fought to stifle her sobs. The autumn of 1878 had brought nothing but hardship since her arrival in Stockton, California, and on this particular evening, with the sun casting long shadows through the slats of the weathered barn walls, her resolve had finally crumbled. She hadn't heard the approaching footsteps over her quiet weeping, nor noticed the barn door creak open. It wasn't until a gentle throat-clearing broke through her misery that she realized she was no longer alone. "Pardon me, madam." Cassandra startled, hastily wiping her eyes with the sleeve of her dusty dress. A tall figure stood silhouetted in the doorway, hat in hand. As he stepped into the muted light of the barn, she could make out his features, kind eyes set in a sun-weathered face, a strong jaw shadowed with stubble, and shoulders broad enough to suggest a life of hard work. "I don't mean to intrude," he said, his voice low and gentle. "I heard someone in here and thought it might be trouble." "I'm sorry," Cassandra replied, embarrassment heating her cheeks. "This is your barn. I shouldn't be here." The man regarded her carefully. "It is my barn, but that don't mean a person can't take shelter if they need it." He hesitated, then gestured toward the farmhouse visible through the open door. "Would you care for some tea, Mississippi?" "Turner. Cassandra Turner," she supplied, surprised by the unexpected kindness. "Levi Carson," he offered with a small nod. "If you'll wait here, Miss Turner, I'll be back in a moment." Before she could respond, he turned and walked back toward the modest farmhouse that sat a stone's throw from the barn. Cassandra considered fleeing while he was gone, but exhaustion kept her rooted to the hay bale where she sat. Besides, she had nowhere to go. True to his word, Levi returned shortly, carefully balancing 2 tin mugs of steaming tea. He handed one to her, then settled himself on another hay bale, leaving a respectful distance between them. The warmth of the mug seeped into Cassandra's cold fingers as she accepted it gratefully. The rich aroma of the tea enhanced with what smelled like honey was comforting in a way she hadn't experienced in months. Levi took a sip from his own mug, then set it aside. His eyes, warm and brown as the tea itself, met hers without judgment or suspicion. "Tell me why," he said simply. "Tell me why a young woman is weeping alone in my barn at dusk." The gentleness in his voice nearly undid her composure again. Cassandra took a shaky sip of the tea to steady herself, finding it perfectly sweetened. "It's a long story, Mr. Carson. I've got time," he replied. "And it's just Levi." Something about his calm patience broke through the walls she'd built around herself. The words began to tumble out, hesitantly at first, then with increasing urgency. "I came west 3 months ago from Boston. My father died last year, and there was nothing left for me there." She paused, taking another sip of tea. "He was a professor, and after his passing, I discovered he'd left substantial debts. Our home and possessions were sold to pay his creditors." Levi nodded but didn't interrupt. "I had a cousin in Sacramento who wrote that I could stay with her family while establishing myself as a schoolteacher. I used what little inheritance remained to purchase passage west." Cassandra's voice grew bitter. "When I arrived, I learned my cousin had moved on to Oregon without bothering to inform me." "That's mighty unfortunate," Levi said with genuine sympathy. "I found work in Sacramento, but—" She hesitated, not wanting to speak ill of others. "The boarding house where I stayed wasn't respectable. The owner had expectations I couldn't meet." Understanding darkened Levi's expression, but still he simply listened. "I left with what little I had and made my way here to Stockton, hoping to find respectable employment. I've been staying at Mrs. Holloway's boarding house for ladies, but my funds are nearly depleted. Today, I learned the teaching position I applied for was given to the mayor's niece instead." Her voice cracked. "I have 1 week's board left, And then I don't know what I'll do. A heavy silence settled between them, broken only by the occasional nickering of horses in their stalls. I'm sorry for trespassing, Cassandra added hastily. I was walking to clear my thoughts and found myself here. I didn't mean to intrude. Levi took another sip of his tea, his expression thoughtful. No need for apologies. Sometimes a body needs a quiet place to let out their troubles. He studied her face for a long moment. You said you're trained as a teacher? Cassandra nodded. I assisted my father with his students in Boston. I have references, but they seem to carry little weight this far west. As it happens, Miss Turner, I've been looking for someone to help around my ranch, particularly with keeping my accounts and correspondence. My sister usually assists me, but she's expecting her first child and has moved to her husband's homestead near Sonora. Hope flickered briefly in Cassandra's chest, but she tamped it down, unwilling to be disappointed again. That's kind of you, Mr. Carson Levi, but I know nothing about ranching. A small smile touched his lips. I don't need another ranch hand. I need someone with education and good sense. The ranch books need organizing, and I have business letters requiring responses that I never find time to write. He gestured to his calloused hands. My penmanship leaves much to be desired anyway. I could certainly help with such tasks, Cassandra said cautiously. But where would I stay? My sister's room sits empty in the house. It's modest but comfortable. Seeing her hesitation, he added, Mrs. Peterson comes by 3 days a week to help with cooking and cleaning. She's been with my family since I was a boy, and her presence would ensure all proprieties are observed. Cassandra studied him carefully. In Boston, such an arrangement would be scandalous, but the West operated under different rules of necessity. Levi Carson's eyes held no guile, only straightforward honesty. I can pay you fair wages, he continued, and provide room and board. If the arrangement proves unsuitable, I'll ensure you have funds to move on to wherever you wish. It was more generosity than she'd encountered since leaving Boston. Still, caution held her back. Why would you do this for a stranger you found crying in your barn? Levi set his empty mug aside. My mother came west as a young widow with 2 small children. A rancher gave her work as his housekeeper when no one else would hire a woman with young ones. That rancher eventually became my stepfather. His smile was gentle. Sometimes folks just need a fair chance. Cassandra felt the tension begin to ease from her shoulders. I would be grateful for the opportunity, Mr. Carson. When would you like me to begin? Levi, he corrected again. And you can start tomorrow if that suits. Finish your week at Mrs. Holloway's, and I'll have the room ready for you after that. He stood, retrieving his hat. For now, let me see you safely back to town before it gets any darker. As Cassandra followed Levi Carson out of the barn, she found herself studying his tall figure in the fading light. For the first time since arriving in California, she felt something other than dread when thinking about tomorrow. The following morning, Cassandra arrived at the Carson Ranch just as the sun was beginning its climb over the eastern hills. Levi was already at work in the corral, his attention focused on a spirited chestnut mare who seemed reluctant to accept a saddle. Cassandra paused at the fence, watching as he spoke in soothing tones to the nervous animal. Good morning, she called when there was a lull in his efforts. Levi turned, surprise giving way to a warm smile. Miss Turner. Wasn't expecting you quite so early. I hope that's not a problem. I thought I would familiarize myself with the work before officially beginning next week. No problem at all. He secured the mare to a hitching post and crossed to the fence where Cassandra stood. Have you had breakfast? When she shook her head, he gestured toward the house. Come on then. Can't have you working hungry. The Carson homestead was larger than it had appeared in the dusk of the previous evening. The main house was a sturdy 2-story structure built of local timber, with a wide front porch and large windows. Several outbuildings, the barn she'd taken refuge in, a bunkhouse, a smokehouse, and what appeared to be a workshop were arranged in a practical half-circle behind it. Beyond these lay pastures, corrals, and in the distance, the rolling hills that marked the eastern boundary of Levi's property. Inside, the house was surprisingly well kept for a bachelor's residence. The main room served as both parlor and dining area, with a large stone fireplace dominating one wall. Simple but comfortable furniture was arranged practically, and shelves lined with books suggested that Levi Carson was more than just a rancher. "My sister insisted on maintaining certain standards," he explained, noting her surprised appraisal of the tidy space. "Said a man living like a savage would turn into one." In the kitchen, Levi proved himself capable enough, preparing a simple but hearty breakfast of flapjacks, bacon, and coffee. As they ate at the worn oak table, he explained more about the ranch and what her duties would entail. "Carson Ranch isn't the biggest spread in the San Joaquin Valley, but it's productive enough. My father's stepfather, that is, left it to me when he passed 5 years ago. We raise cattle primarily, but I've been breeding horses as well." "How many hands do you employ?" Cassandra asked, finding herself genuinely interested. "For full-time, plus extra help during roundup and branding. The men bunk in the bunkhouse except for Miguel, who lives with his family in the small cabin by the creek." After breakfast, Levi showed her to a small room off the main living area that served as his office. Unlike the rest of the house, this space was in disarray, papers stacked haphazardly on every surface, ledgers open at random pages, and correspondence spilling from overstuffed folders. "I warned you it was in poor condition," he said, looking slightly embarrassed. "Between the spring roundup and the mare foaling season, I've fallen behind." "It's nothing that can't be put right," Cassandra assured him, already mentally organizing the chaos. Levi left her to acquaint herself with the office while he returned to his work with the horses. For the next several hours, Cassandra sorted through papers, organizing them by type and date. She discovered that while Levi's business affairs were chaotic in arrangement, his actual operations seemed sound. The ranch was profitable, with careful reinvestment in breeding stock and land improvements. By midday, she had made significant progress, creating orderly stacks of documents requiring attention and filing others appropriately. When Levi returned to check on her, his eyebrows rose in appreciation. "You've accomplished more in one morning than I have in months," he said. "There's still much to do," she replied, "but I believe I understand your operations now. Your business is quite impressive, though your record-keeping methods leave something to be desired." A rich chuckle escaped him. "That's putting it kindly, Miss Turner. Please, if I'm to call you Levi, you must call me Cassandra." Their eyes met, and something passed between them, a simple acknowledgement of mutual respect. Cassandra quickly looked away, conscious of a warmth creeping into her cheeks that had nothing to do with the California sunshine. Levi cleared his throat. "I've prepared some lunch if you're hungry." They ate on the porch, enjoying the mild autumn weather. Cassandra found conversation with Levi surprisingly easy. Unlike many men she had encountered, he listened as much as he spoke, showing genuine interest in her opinions and experiences. "What brought you west?" she asked during a comfortable lull in conversation. "You mentioned your mother came as a widow, but you seem established here." "I was born in Missouri," Levi explained. "My father died in '49, caught up in the gold fever like so many others. Mother decided California might offer better opportunities for a widow with 2 young children than remaining in Missouri would." His expression grew distant. "It was a hard journey. I was only 6, but I remember enough of it." "And your sister?" "Martha was 8. She's married to a good man who runs a successful orchard near Sonora." Pride warmed his voice. "Their first child is due in January." "You must miss her," Cassandra observed. "I do. She kept this place and me civilized." He smiled ruefully. "Hence my current state of disorganization." The afternoon passed quickly as Cassandra continued to bring order to the office. By the time the sun began its descent, she had drafted responses to several business letters for Levi's approval and had begun organizing the ranch's financial ledgers. "You should head back to town before dark," Levi said, appearing in the doorway. "I can saddle a horse for you." "That's not necessary," Cassandra replied. "I enjoy walking, and the road to town is clear enough." "It's nearly 3 miles," he protested. "All the more reason I should enjoy the exercise while the weather permits," she insisted. Eventually, Levi relented, though he insisted on walking with her to the edge of his property. As they strolled side by side, Cassandra found herself noticing details about him, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled, the careful way he modulated his long stride to accommodate her shorter one, the gentle strength in his hands as he helped her across a small creek. "I'll expect you Monday, then?" he asked as they reached the main road to town. "Yes. I'll settle my account with Mrs. Holloway and be here by mid-morning, if that's suitable." "That's fine." He hesitated, then added, "I'm grateful for your help today, Cassandra. The place already feels more orderly." "I'm the one who should be grateful," she replied sincerely. "You've offered me an opportunity when I most needed one." As she walked toward town, Cassandra found herself smiling. For the first time since her father's death, she felt a sense of purpose and perhaps even the faintest stirring of hope. The next week passed in a blur of activity as Cassandra settled into her new role at Carson Ranch. She moved into the modest but comfortable bedroom that had belonged to Levi's sister, unpacking her few possessions with care. The room faced east, catching the morning sun, and had been freshly cleaned and aired. A simple quilt covered the bed, and curtains of faded blue gingham framed the window. It was the first space that had felt truly her own since leaving Boston. Mrs. Peterson, the housekeeper who came 3 days a week, was initially reserved toward the new arrival, but warmed considerably when she discovered Cassandra's skill with needle and thread. Together they mended linens and clothing on Wednesday afternoons, their conversations gradually moving from polite small talk to genuine exchange. "Mr. Levi's a good man," Mrs. Peterson remarked one day as they sat on the porch, taking advantage of the clear autumn light for their sewing. "His stepfather was fair but stern. His mother, bless her soul, was the gentlest woman I ever knew. Levi got the best of both of them, strong when needed but kind at heart." "He's been very generous to me," Cassandra acknowledged. "He's always had a soft spot for those in need," the older woman continued, her needle flashing in the sunlight. "Takes after his mother that way. Sarah Carson never turned away a hungry soul, even when they had little enough themselves." As the days passed, Cassandra grew increasingly comfortable with the rhythm of ranch life. She rose early, often catching glimpses of Levi and his men heading out to work as she prepared for her own tasks. Mornings were devoted to correspondence and bookkeeping, afternoons to organizing the household accounts and occasionally assisting Mrs. Peterson with household tasks. Levi himself remained a respectful employer, always cordial but careful to maintain appropriate boundaries. They shared meals when Mrs. Peterson wasn't there to cook, taking turns preparing simple fare. Cassandra discovered that Levi, while no gourmet, was competent in the kitchen, another skill he attributed to his mother's insistence that her son learn to fend for himself. In the evenings, after the day's work was done, they often sat in the main room, Cassandra with her mending or a book, Levi studying maps of his property or reviewing the notes she had prepared during the day. These quiet hours became something Cassandra looked forward to, their conversation flowing easily between practical ranch matters and more personal topics. "I've been thinking about expanding the orchard," Levi mentioned one evening in late October as they sat by the fire, There's good money in fruit if you can get it to market quickly enough, and the soil along the eastern ridge would suit apples and pears. Have you considered peaches as well? Cassandra asked. I noticed they fetch a good price at the mercantile in town. I hadn't, but it's worth investigating. He looked up from his map with an appreciative smile. You've a good head for business, Cassandra. My father taught mathematics before his health failed, she explained. He believed his daughter should understand numbers as well as any boy. He sounds like a wise man. He was, though perhaps not in all ways. A shadow crossed her face. His generosity often exceeded his means, which is how we came to financial ruin. Levi set aside his maps. Tell me about him. And so she did, describing her father's passionate intellect, his dedication to his students, and his utter impracticality in worldly matters. Her mother had died when Cassandra was only 12, leaving her to become the practical member of the household at a young age. He would forget to eat if I didn't remind him, she recalled with fond exasperation. Once, he was so absorbed in translating a Latin text that he walked to his college in his house slippers during a snowstorm. I had to bring his boots to him before his feet froze. Levi laughed at that, the warm sound filling the room. My stepfather was the opposite practical to a fault. He tracked every penny and planned each season's work down to the day. It drove my mother to distraction sometimes. Yet they were happy? Deeply. They had their differences, but there was never any doubt of their devotion to each other. His expression softened in remembrance. My real father, I barely remember, but James Carson was every inch a father to me, blood or no. As October gave way to November, Cassandra found herself increasingly aware of Levi in ways that extended beyond their professional relationship. She noticed the way the morning light caught the auburn highlights in his dark hair, how his face in repose had a gentle quality that belied his strength, the grace with which he handled the spirited horses he was training. More than once, she caught herself watching him from the window of the office as he worked in the corrals, only to look hastily away when he glanced toward the house. For his part, Levi seemed to find more reasons to seek her company. He began asking her opinion on business matters beyond her immediate responsibilities, valuing her perspective on everything from livestock purchases to negotiations with the railroad representatives who wanted to expand their lines through part of his land. You see angles I miss, he told her one afternoon as they reviewed a contract together. I get caught up in the immediate terms and forget to look for the hidden costs. That's because you're fundamentally honest, Cassandra replied. You expect others to be as straightforward as you are. Their hands brushed as she passed him the document, and neither pulled away immediately. For a moment, they remained connected by that slight touch, something unspoken passing between them. Then Cassandra withdrew her hand, her cheeks flushing as she turned her attention back to the papers before them. That evening, as they finished a simple supper, Levi cleared his throat uncertainly. There's a harvest social at the church in town this Saturday, he said, studiously focused on his plate. Dancing, food, that sort of thing. I usually attend, being one of the larger landowners hereabouts. He finally looked up, meeting her eyes. Would you care to accompany me, Cassandra? Her heart quickened at the invitation, but caution tempered her response. Are you asking as my employer, Levi? No. His reply was immediate and certain. I'm asking as a man who enjoys your company and would like to show you something beyond this ranch and the inside of my disorganized office. Cassandra considered the implications. Attending a social event with Levi would signal to the community that their relationship was more than merely professional. While she had kept largely to herself during her brief time in Stockton before coming to work for him, she knew how quickly gossip spread in small towns. Yet the prospect of an evening away from the ranch, enjoying music and dancing, was tempting. More tempting still was the thought of spending that time with Levi in a setting that allowed for greater social interaction than their daily routine permitted. "I would be pleased to accompany you," she finally said, "though I should warn you that my dancing skills may have grown rusty from disuse." Relief and pleasure brightened his expression. "Then we'll be rusty together. I spend more time with horses than at social gatherings these days." The next day, Cassandra faced a dilemma she hadn't anticipated. She had nothing suitable to wear to such an occasion. Her wardrobe consisted primarily of practical work dresses, with one slightly better dress reserved for Sunday services, which she had attended sporadically since arriving in Stockton. Mrs. Peterson, arriving for her regular Wednesday duties, immediately grasped the problem when Cassandra hesitantly explained the situation. "Well now, that won't do at all," the housekeeper declared. "A young woman needs a proper dress for socializing, especially when accompanied by a man like Mr. Levi." Her eyes twinkled knowingly. "He doesn't take an interest in just anyone, you know." Before Cassandra could respond to that telling remark, the older woman was already mentally assessing possibilities. "I believe Martha left some fabric in the sewing room. She was always collecting pretty things for someday projects. Let's see what we might find." In a cedar chest in what Levi called the sewing room, really a small alcove off the kitchen, they discovered several lengths of fabric that Martha Carson had indeed stored away. Among them was a lovely rust-colored silk, still in excellent condition despite its years in storage. "This would suit your coloring beautifully," Mrs. Peterson said, holding the fabric against Cassandra's cheek. "And we have just enough time to fashion something if we start today." For the next 3 days, the two women worked together in every spare moment, cutting and stitching the silk into a gown that was modest enough for a church social but flattering to Cassandra's slender figure. Mrs. Peterson revealed herself to be an accomplished seamstress, teaching Cassandra techniques she had never learned during her more basic education in needlework. Levi, aware of their project but tactfully staying clear of the sewing room, arranged for one of the ranch hands to drive into town for any notions or trimmings the women required. By Saturday morning, the dress was complete, a simple but elegant creation with a fitted bodice, modest neckline trimmed with cream-colored lace, and a gracefully draped skirt that moved beautifully when Cassandra walked. "You look lovely," Mrs. Peterson said as Cassandra tried on the finished dress. "Mr. Levi won't know what hit him." "It's just a social gathering," Cassandra protested, though she couldn't help admiring her reflection in the small mirror. The color warmed her fair complexion and brought out the honey highlights in her brown hair, which Mrs. Peterson had helped her arrange in a style more elaborate than her usual practical knot. "Humph," was the housekeeper's only response, but her knowing smile spoke volumes. When Cassandra descended the stairs that evening, Levi was waiting in the main room, dressed in his best clothes, a dark suit that had clearly been brushed and pressed for the occasion, a crisp white shirt and a string tie. He had trimmed his beard and slicked back his usually unruly hair. The effect was striking, transforming the hard-working rancher into a handsome gentleman who wouldn't have looked out of place in a Boston drawing room. The look in his eyes when he saw her made Cassandra's heart flutter. "You're beautiful," he said simply, making no attempt to hide his admiration. "Thank you," she replied, suddenly shy under his gaze. "You look very handsome yourself." He offered his arm with a slight bow. "Shall we?" The wagon ride to town was pleasant, the evening mild for November. Levi had installed the rarely used cushioned seat in his best wagon and had even thought to bring a blanket for her lap. As they traveled, he pointed out landmarks and shared stories about the area's history. "My stepfather helped establish the first proper road from here to Sacramento," he told her as they passed a particular bend in the river. "Before that, it was little more than a cattle trail. He always believed in building for the future." The church hall was already buzzing with activity when they arrived. Lanterns hung from the rafters, casting a warm glow over the decorated space. Tables laden with food lined one wall, while at the far end, a small group of musicians tuned their instruments in preparation for the dancing to come. Their entrance drew notice. Cassandra was aware of curious glances and whispered conversations. Levi, seemingly oblivious to the attention, guided her through the crowd, stopping frequently to introduce her to neighbors and friends. "Miss Turner is helping organize my ranch accounts," he explained simply, though his proud tone suggested he valued her contributions highly. Some of the townspeople Cassandra had met during her brief residence at Mrs. Holloway's boarding house. Others were new acquaintances. Most were welcoming, though she detected a certain reserve from some of the unmarried women present, particularly when Levi remained attentively by her side. "Levi Carson, about time you brought someone to one of these gatherings," declared a robust older man who introduced himself as Judge Wilson. "We were beginning to think you'd sworn off society entirely." "Just waiting for the right company, Judge," Levi replied with a smile that warmed Cassandra more than the crowded room. The evening progressed pleasantly. The food was abundant and delicious, the company generally congenial, and the music, while not as sophisticated as what Cassandra had known in Boston, was lively and appealing. When the dancing began, Levi led her onto the floor for a reel. "Remember, I warned you about my rusty dancing skills," he said as they took their positions. "And I warned you about mine," she returned with a laugh. In truth, they matched well as dance partners. Levi moved with the same natural grace he showed on horseback, and Cassandra quickly recalled the steps she had learned in her youth. They danced several sets together, both slightly breathless and flushed with enjoyment. During a pause while the musicians rested, Levi brought Cassandra a cup of punch and guided her to a quieter corner of the hall. "Are you enjoying yourself?" he asked. "Very much," she replied honestly. "It's been a long time since I attended a social gathering. I'd forgotten how pleasant it could be." "You've brought something special to it," he said, his eyes intent on hers. "This hall's never seemed so bright before." Before Cassandra could respond to this barely veiled compliment, they were interrupted by a striking woman in an elaborate green dress. "Levi Carson, you haven't asked me to dance once this evening," the woman said with a practiced pout. "And here I wore my new dress from San Francisco especially." "Good evening, Victoria," Levi replied, his tone polite but notably cooler than it had been moments before. "May I present Miss Cassandra Turner?" "Cassandra, this is Miss Victoria Hargrove, daughter of the bank president." "A pleasure," Victoria said, though her assessing gaze suggested otherwise. "You're the young woman staying at Levi's ranch, aren't you? How unconventional." The slight emphasis on the last word was deliberate, and Cassandra felt herself stiffen. Before she could formulate a response, Levi intervened. "Miss Turner is my business manager and has her own quarters at the ranch, with Mrs. Peterson in attendance 3 days a week." His voice held a warning edge. "There's nothing unconventional about a proper employment arrangement, Victoria." The other woman's smile remained fixed, but her eyes narrowed slightly. "Of course not. How fortunate for you both." She turned her attention fully to Levi. "Now, about that dance you owe me." With an apologetic glance at Cassandra, Levi allowed himself to be led to the dance floor. Watching them, Cassandra couldn't help noticing how Victoria positioned herself as close to Levi as propriety allowed, her hand lingering on his arm even after the dance began. "Don't mind Victoria," said a friendly voice beside her. Cassandra turned to find a pleasant-faced young woman about her own age. "She's been trying to catch Levi Carson for years, but he's never shown the slightest interest." "I'm not sure it's my place to mind," Cassandra replied carefully. The woman laughed. "I'm Ellen Simmons, by the way. My husband Thomas runs the livery stable. You're welcome to join us at our table while Victoria monopolizes your escort." Grateful for the kindness, Cassandra accompanied Ellen to a table where several other couples were engaged in cheerful conversation. They welcomed her warmly, and soon she was drawn into a discussion about the upcoming Thanksgiving celebrations in Stockton. "You must join us for the community dinner," urged Mrs. Simmons, Ellen's mother-in-law. "Everyone contributes a dish, and we gather at the town hall. It's quite the event." "That sounds lovely," Cassandra replied, "though I suppose it would depend on Mr. Carson's plans." Knowing glances were exchanged around the table at this, but before any comment could be made, Levi appeared at her side, having extricated himself from Victoria's company. "I hope I'm not interrupting," he said, "but I believe they're playing a waltz next, and I was hoping to claim that dance with you, Cassandra." The waltz was more intimate than the reels and square dances they had shared earlier. As Levi's hand settled respectfully at her waist and he took her other hand in his, Cassandra was acutely aware of his proximity. They moved together across the floor with surprising harmony, as though they had danced together for years rather than hours. "I must apologize for Victoria's rudeness," Levi said quietly as they circled the floor. "There's no need," Cassandra assured him. "I understand her interest in you is of long standing, according to Mrs. Simmons." A grimace crossed his face. "Victoria's interest is in my land and assets, not me. Her father has been trying to broker a match between us since I inherited the ranch." His expression softened as he looked down at her. "I prefer the company of someone who sees me as more than a favorable business arrangement." The warmth in his eyes made Cassandra's pulse quicken, and she found herself unable to look away. For a suspended moment, they danced in perfect synchrony, something unspoken but powerful passing between them. When the music ended, Levi reluctantly released her, though he kept her hand tucked in the crook of his arm as they made their way back to the refreshment table. For the remainder of the evening, he stayed close by her side, dancing with her for most sets and introducing her to more of his neighbors and friends. By the time they began the journey back to the ranch, Cassandra felt as though she had gained a clearer picture of both Stockton society and Levi Carson's place within it. He was clearly respected, even admired, though some found his independent nature and lack of social ambition puzzling. "I hope you weren't overwhelmed by all the introductions," Levi said as they traveled through the cool night, stars brilliant above them in the clear sky. "Not at all. Everyone was very kind." She hesitated, then added, "They think highly of you. Most of them have known me since I was a boy," he replied with a self-deprecating shrug. "They remember when I was all knees and elbows, falling into the creek and getting into scrapes with the other boys. Yet they respect the man you've become." He was quiet for a moment, then said, "What about you, Cassandra? What do you think of me?" The directness of the question took her by surprise. In the darkness of the wagon, with only moonlight to illuminate his features, she found the courage to be equally direct. "I think you're a good man, Levi Carson, honorable, hard-working, and kinder than you perhaps realize." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "You offered help when I needed it most, with no expectation of anything in return. That speaks more to your character than any opinion your neighbors might hold." He didn't immediately respond, and for a moment Cassandra feared she had been too forthright. Then his hand covered hers where it rested on the seat between them. "Your good opinion means more to me than all the others combined," he said softly. They completed the journey in a companionable silence, each lost in private thoughts yet comfortably aware of the other's presence. When they reached the ranch, Levi helped her down from the wagon, his hands lingering at her waist slightly longer than necessary. "Thank you for accompanying me tonight," he said as they stood in the silvery moonlight, the house dark and quiet before them. "Thank you for asking me," she replied, suddenly shy again under his intent gaze. For a breathless moment, it seemed he might say more or perhaps do more, but instead, He merely offered his arm to escort her to the door. "Good night, Cassandra," he said when they reached the porch. "Good night, Levi." As she prepared for bed in her quiet room, Cassandra found herself replaying moments from the evening, the warmth in Levi's eyes when he first saw her in her new dress, the feeling of his hand at her waist during the waltz, the quiet intensity of his voice when he said her opinion mattered more than all others. Something was changing between them, something that both excited and frightened her. After the hardships and disappointments that had driven her west, Cassandra had guarded her heart carefully, unwilling to risk further pain. Yet, in the few short weeks since Levi Carson had found her weeping in his barn, those carefully constructed defenses had begun to crumble. Sleep was elusive that night as Cassandra contemplated what the future might hold and whether she was brave enough to reach for it. November deepened toward Thanksgiving, bringing cooler temperatures and occasional rain. Life at Carson Ranch settled into a rhythm that felt increasingly natural to Cassandra. Her work in the office progressed well. The ranch books were now properly organized, correspondence was handled promptly, and she had implemented systems that made tracking expenses and income more efficient. "I don't know how I managed before you came," Levi told her one afternoon as they reviewed the month's figures together. "The place runs twice as smoothly now." "I believe you managed by working twice as hard and sleeping half as much," Cassandra replied with a smile. "Your notes were actually quite comprehensive, just creatively arranged." Their easy rapport had continued to develop since the harvest social, though neither had directly addressed the shifting nature of their relationship. Levi found more reasons to seek her company during the day, often bringing her along when he rode out to check on distant parts of the ranch. These excursions gave Cassandra a deeper appreciation for the beauty of the land and for Levi's dedication to it. "My stepfather always said a rancher should know every acre he owns," Levi explained as they rode along a ridge overlooking a wide valley where some of his cattle grazed. "Not just for business sense, but because the land itself is a living thing. It speaks to those who listen." "What does it say to you?" Cassandra asked, genuinely curious. He considered for a moment, his gaze sweeping across the landscape. "That there's room here for dreams to take root and grow. That hard work and patience can transform even the most challenging terrain into something fruitful." He looked at her then, his expression earnest. "That beauty sometimes appears where you least expect to find it." In such moments, Cassandra found it increasingly difficult to remind herself of her position as an employee. The way Levi looked at her, as though she were something precious and rare, stirred feelings she had thought herself too practical to indulge. As Thanksgiving approached, preparations began for a celebration at the ranch. Levi had declined the invitation to the town gathering, explaining to Cassandra that he preferred to host his own workers and their families. "Many of them have nowhere else to go," he said. "Miguel's family, the bunkhouse men, this is their home too, in a way. I want them to feel welcome at my table." Mrs. Peterson arrived 2 days before the holiday to begin cooking, commandeering the kitchen with cheerful authority. Cassandra was drafted into service, chopping vegetables, kneading bread dough, and helping prepare the numerous pies and side dishes that would accompany the wild turkeys Levi and 2 of his hands had hunted for the occasion. The day before Thanksgiving, while Levi was occupied with ranch business and Mrs. Peterson was absorbed in her baking, Cassandra slipped away to the small building Levi used as a workshop. She had noticed during her exploration of the ranch that he was skilled with woodworking, crafting practical items for use around the property but also occasionally more decorative pieces. Her father's birthday gift to her on her 16th birthday had been a handcrafted wooden box for her treasures, its lid inlaid with a pattern of stars. That box, along with most of her possessions, had been sold to pay his debts. While she couldn't recreate the original, Cassandra had been collecting small pieces of wood from around the ranch, intending to fashion a simple frame for a drawing she had made of the Carson homestead. She had just begun measuring and cutting when a voice from the doorway startled her. "So this is where you've been hiding?" Cassandra looked up to find Levi watching her with amusement. I'm sorry, I should have asked before using your workshop. No need for apologies. I'm just curious what you're making. He moved closer, examining the pieces laid out on the workbench. It's meant to be a frame, she explained, slightly embarrassed by her amateur effort compared to his skilled work. For a drawing. May I see it? The drawing, Hesitantly, Cassandra retrieved the rolled paper from where she had tucked it beside the bench. Unrolling it, she revealed a carefully rendered sketch of the Carson Ranch house, with the surrounding outbuildings and the distant hills captured in soft detail. Levi studied it silently for a long moment. This is beautiful, Cassandra. I had no idea you were an artist. Hardly an artist, she demurred. My father encouraged me to practice drawing as part of my studies. He believed it taught observation and patience. He was right about that. Levi's fingers hovered over the drawing, tracing the lines without touching the paper. You've captured it perfectly, not just how it looks, but somehow how it feels too. He looked up at her, his expression softening. Is this for you? Actually, I thought it might be a gift. For you. She felt a flush rising to her cheeks. For Thanksgiving. To thank you for everything you've done for me. Surprise and something deeper flickered in his eyes. Cassandra. He seemed at a loss for words, his usual composure momentarily shaken. It's a simple thing, she said quickly. I know it's not. It's perfect, he interrupted, his voice rough with emotion. No one has ever given me something so thoughtful. Their eyes met and held, the moment stretching between them like a tangible connection. Levi took a half-step closer, his hand moving as if to touch her face, then stopping just short. Levi, Miss Turner. Mrs. Peterson's voice called from the direction of the house. Where have you both gotten to? I need help moving the tables. The moment broke, both of them stepping back as though awakened from a shared dream. Levi cleared his throat, regaining his composure. We should go help before she comes looking for us with a rolling pin. Yes, of course. Cassandra carefully rolled the drawing again. I'll finish the frame after Thanksgiving. Levi nodded, but as she moved to pass him in the narrow doorway, his hand caught hers gently. Thank you, he said simply, his eyes conveying far more than the words alone. Thanksgiving Day dawned clear and cool, the sun rising into a pristine blue sky. The ranch bustled with activity as final preparations were made for the feast. Tables were arranged in the yard between the house and barn, covered with tablecloths Mrs. Peterson had pressed to crisp perfection. By mid-morning, the tantalizing aromas of roasting turkey, baking bread, and spiced pies filled the air. Miguel's wife Maria arrived with their 3 children, bearing additional dishes to contribute to the meal. The bunkhouse men, usually rough and ready in their work clothes, appeared in their Sunday best, hair slicked down and faces freshly shaved. 2 neighboring families who helped during busy seasons also joined the gathering, bringing more food and several bottles of homemade wine. Levi presided over the assembled company with natural grace, ensuring everyone was welcomed and comfortable. Cassandra found herself watching him with growing admiration as he moved among his guests, his genuine concern for their welfare evident in every interaction. When everyone was seated, Levi remained standing at the head of the main table. He waited for the conversations to quiet, then cleared his throat. Before we begin, I'd like to say a few words. His gaze moved around the gathering, including each person. Thanksgiving is about gratitude for blessings received. Today, I'm thankful for many things: for good land, for favorable weather, for a successful year on the ranch. His eyes found Cassandra's. And for new friends who have brought unexpected joy to our lives here. A murmur of agreement ran through the gathering, and Cassandra felt several warm glances directed her way. She ducked her head, both pleased and embarrassed by the attention. "I'm grateful for all of you," Levi continued. "For your hard work, your loyalty, and your friendship. Carson Ranch isn't just a piece of land, it's all of us together, making something worthwhile." He raised his glass. "To good friends and the blessings of home." "To home," echoed around the tables as glasses were raised. The meal that followed was abundant and joyful, with conversation and laughter flowing as freely as the wine and cider. Cassandra found herself drawn into discussions with Maria about her children's education and with the neighboring ranchers about the coming winter. Throughout the meal, she was aware of Levi's presence, his attention repeatedly returning to her even as he engaged with all his guests. As the afternoon progressed and the meal gave way to more relaxed socializing, Levi made his way to Cassandra's side. "Would you walk with me?" he asked quietly. "There's something I'd like to show you." Intrigued, Cassandra nodded, following him away from the gathering and toward a path that led up a gentle slope behind the house. The trail wound through a stand of oak trees, eventually emerging onto a small plateau that offered a panoramic view of the entire ranch and the surrounding countryside. "This is breathtaking," Cassandra said, turning slowly to take in the vista. The ranch buildings looked like miniature models from this height, the pastures spreading out in all directions, bounded by the distant mountains. "My stepfather brought me up here when I was 10, Levi said, coming to stand beside her. He said, "Son, one day all this will be yours to care for. Remember that caring for land means more than just using it, it means understanding what it needs to thrive." He was a wise man. He was. Levi's voice held reverence. "Everything I know about ranching, about responsibility, about being a man of my word, I learned from him." They stood in companionable silence for a time, watching the shadows lengthen across the landscape as the afternoon sun began its descent toward the western hills. "I have something for you," Levi said eventually, reaching into his pocket. "A Thanksgiving gift, though it's not nearly as thoughtful as your drawing." He withdrew a small object and held it out to her. In his palm rested a delicate wooden carving of a rose, its petals and leaves rendered with remarkable detail despite its small size. "Levi, it's exquisite," Cassandra breathed, carefully taking the carving to examine it more closely. "When did you have time to make this?" "I've been working on it in the evenings, after you retired." A slightly sheepish smile crossed his face. "I wanted it to be a surprise." "It's beautiful." She looked up at him, touched by the gesture. "Thank you." "There's something else I want to give you today, Cassandra." His expression grew more serious. "Something less tangible but more important." Her heart quickened as he took both her hands in his, the wooden rose cradled between their palms. "When I found you in my barn that evening, I had no idea how completely you would change my life," he began, his voice low and earnest. "These past weeks, watching you bring order and warmth to my home, seeing your intelligence and courage in the face of adversity, I've come to care for you in ways I never expected." Cassandra felt her breath catch, hope and apprehension mingling in her chest. "I know it hasn't been long," Levi continued, "and I don't want to rush you or make you uncomfortable, but I need you to know that my feelings for you have grown beyond those of an employer for his employee, beyond even those of a friend, dear as that friendship has become to me." "Levi," she began, but he gently squeezed her hands. "Please, let me finish before my courage fails me." He took a deep breath. "I'm not asking for any declaration from you today. I only want you to know that you have come to mean more to me than anyone has in a very long time. And if you could consider, if you might someday come to think of me as more than your employer or friend, I would count myself the most fortunate of men." The sincerity in his eyes left no doubt of his feelings. Cassandra felt a surge of emotion so powerful it momentarily robbed her of speech. When she found her voice, it was steady despite the tumult of her heart. Levi Carson, when you found me that day, I was at my lowest point. I had lost hope, lost faith in myself and in the possibility of happiness. She looked down at their joined hands, then back up to his face. You offered me kindness when I needed it most, respect when I felt worthless, and purpose when I was adrift. His eyes never left hers, intent and vulnerable. In these weeks, I've come to admire you deeply, your integrity, your compassion, your quiet strength. And yes, my feelings have grown far beyond gratitude or friendship. A smile trembled on her lips. I don't need more time to know that my heart has already made its choice. The joy that transformed his expression was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. Slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, Levi released her hands to cradle her face gently between his palms. "May I?" he whispered, his gaze dropping to her lips. In answer, Cassandra rose on tiptoe, closing the distance between them. Their first kiss was gentle, almost reverent, a promise exchanged without words. When they parted, both were smiling, a shared understanding passing between them. "We should return to our guests," Cassandra said after a moment, though she made no move to step away from him. "They'll wonder where we've gone," Levi agreed, equally reluctant to end the moment. In the end, they walked back hand in hand, the wooden rose tucked safely in Cassandra's pocket. As they approached the gathering, where music had started and some of the younger folk were dancing on the packed earth between the tables, Levi paused. "I want to court you properly, Cassandra. No rushing, no presumptions. You deserve that respect." "I would like that very much," she replied, touched by his consideration. When they rejoined the celebration, Cassandra noticed knowing glances exchanged among the guests, particularly from Mrs. Peterson, whose approving smile suggested she had anticipated this development. Yet no one commented directly, allowing the newly acknowledged couple to navigate this change in their relationship at their own pace. As twilight deepened into evening and lanterns were lit around the yard, Levi drew Cassandra into the impromptu dancing. Under the canopy of stars, with the music of fiddle and guitar surrounding them, they moved together in perfect harmony, each step an affirmation of the connection they had found. Looking up at Levi's face, illuminated by lantern light and happiness, Cassandra felt a sense of homecoming more profound than any she had ever known. Whatever the future held, she was no longer facing it alone. Winter descended upon the San Joaquin Valley with gentle determination. While lacking the harsh blizzards of Cassandra's New England childhood, December brought cooler temperatures and frequent rain that transformed the landscape into varying shades of green. The ranch settled into its winter routine, a slower pace than the frenetic activity of spring and summer, but with its own set of essential tasks. For Cassandra and Levi, the weeks following Thanksgiving marked the beginning of a courtship both traditional and unique. Levi was true to his word about proceeding with proper respect. He formally asked to call on her during her free time, bringing small gifts, wildflowers gathered from the hillsides, books from his personal library that he thought might interest her, once even a length of beautiful blue ribbon from the mercantile in town. Their circumstances, however, meant their courtship differed from conventional patterns. Living under the same roof, they shared daily meals and evening conversations as they had before. Yet there was a new awareness between them, a careful consideration of boundaries even as their feelings deepened. Mrs. Peterson, who had quickly discerned the changed nature of their relationship, appointed herself unofficial chaperone during her visits, though her watchfulness was tempered by obvious approval. "I always told Martha that her brother needed a woman with both sense and sensitivity," she confided to Cassandra one afternoon as they worked together in the kitchen. "The good Lord knows he's had opportunities aplenty, but he was waiting for the right one." December also brought a letter from Levi's sister Martha, announcing the birth of a healthy baby boy whom she and her husband had named James, after Levi's stepfather. The news prompted a celebration at the ranch and plans for Levi to travel to Sonora after Christmas to meet his new nephew. "You should come with me," he suggested to Cassandra as they sat by the fire one evening, the letter still in his hands. "Martha has been asking about you in every letter since I first mentioned you were here. She'd love to meet you." The thought of being introduced to Levi's family as someone special in his life both thrilled and intimidated Cassandra. "Are you certain? It seems a family time." "You're important to me," he said simply. "That makes you family too, as far as I'm concerned." The warmth that spread through her at his words had nothing to do with the crackling fire. "Then I would be honored to accompany you." As Christmas approached, the ranch was transformed with simple but heartfelt decorations. Cassandra fashioned wreaths of evergreen branches for the doors and windows, while Levi brought in a small pine tree that they decorated with paper stars, dried berries, and candles. Mrs. Peterson contributed gingerbread cookies shaped like animals that hung from the tree branches, filling the house with their spicy aroma. On Christmas Eve, after a special dinner that Mrs. Peterson had prepared before departing for her own family celebration, Levi and Cassandra sat before the fire, enjoying the peaceful beauty of the decorated room. Outside, a gentle rain pattered against the windows, making the warmth within all the more precious. "I have something for you," Levi said, reaching for a small package wrapped in brown paper and tied with string. "I know the proper exchange of gifts is tomorrow, but I'd like you to have this tonight." Cassandra accepted the package with a smile. "I have something for you as well." She retrieved a larger parcel from beside her chair. "Though perhaps we should wait until morning, as tradition dictates." "I've never been overly concerned with tradition for its own sake," Levi replied with a grin. "Only with what feels right." Unable to resist his enthusiasm, Cassandra carefully untied the string and unwrapped the paper. Inside was a small velvet box, its surface soft against her fingers. With a curious glance at Levi, who watched her intently, she opened the lid. Nestled on a bed of satin lay a delicate gold locket, oval in shape and engraved with a pattern of intertwining vines. It was beautiful in its simplicity, clearly an item of quality without being ostentatious. "Levi, it's lovely," she breathed, lifting it gently from the box. "Open it," he encouraged. Inside, the locket contained a small compartment, currently empty, and an inscription engraved in tiny, elegant script. "Where there is love, there is home." Emotion welled in Cassandra's throat, making speech momentarily impossible. The sentiment spoke directly to the journey that had brought her to this place, to this man from loss and displacement to the discovery of belonging. "I thought you might want to put something inside," Levi explained, his voice gentle. "A memento of your father, perhaps, or anything else that holds meaning for you." "It's perfect," she managed at last, looking up to meet his gaze. "Thank you." He took the locket from her hands, his fingers brushing hers in a touch that still sent warmth coursing through her. "May I?" At her nod, he moved behind her chair to fasten the chain around her neck. The locket settled just below her collarbone, its weight slight but significant. When Levi returned to his seat, his eyes lingered on the golden oval against her dress. "Now your gift," Cassandra said, pushing the wrapped parcel toward him. "Though I fear it may seem humble by comparison." Levi unwrapped the package with care, revealing the framed drawing of the ranch that Cassandra had completed in secret hours over the past weeks. She had finished the wooden frame as well, inlaying it with small pieces of contrasting wood to create a border of stylized mountains and trees. "Cassandra!" Levi's voice held wonder as he examined the gift. "This is extraordinary. You gave me a home when I had none," she said softly. "I wanted to capture it for you, as I see it as a place of beauty and promise." He looked up, his eyes suspiciously bright in the firelight. "No one has ever understood so perfectly what this place means to me." He set the frame carefully aside and reached for her hands. "You see me, Cassandra Turner, not just the rancher or the businessman, but the man beneath. That's a gift beyond price." Impulsively, she leaned forward and pressed a gentle kiss to his lips. "And you see me not as a lost woman weeping in a barn, but as someone of worth and capability. That's an equal gift." Their second kiss was deeper than the first, a meeting of hearts expressed through the tender joining of lips. When they finally parted, both were breathless. A new awareness kindled between them. "We should probably say good night," Levi said reluctantly, though he made no move to release her hands. "Before I forget my promise to court you with all due respect." Cassandra nodded, equally reluctant but mindful of propriety. "Yes, I suppose we should." Yet they remained by the fire a while longer, hands entwined, speaking softly of their hopes for the coming year and the journey they had begun together. Christmas Day brought clearing skies and a crisp brightness that seemed to polish every surface. After exchanging additional small gloves for Levi, a journal for Cassandra, they rode into town for the Christmas service at the little church. The building was crowded with familiar faces who greeted them with varying degrees of curiosity and approval. Victoria Hargrove was in attendance with her family, her expression souring slightly when she noticed Cassandra's new locket glinting in the candlelight. However, the majority of the townspeople seemed genuinely pleased to see them together, particularly the Simmons family, who insisted they join them for Christmas dinner. "We won't take no for an answer," Ellen Simmons declared. "We have more than enough, and no one should be alone on Christmas." "We're hardly alone," Levi pointed out with a smile, his hand resting lightly at the small of Cassandra's back. "All the more reason to celebrate with friends," Thomas Simmons replied. "Besides, Ellen has been hoping to speak with Miss Turner about possibly helping with the children's reading group at the church." The dinner was a lively affair, filled with good food and better company. Cassandra found herself drawn into conversations about community projects and local events, a subtle but significant shift from her previous status as a newcomer to that of someone expected to take part in town life. As they drove back to the ranch in the gathering dusk, Levi glanced at her with a thoughtful expression. "You seem to enjoy yourself today." "I did," she acknowledged. "The Simmonses are very welcoming. Most folks around here are, once they get to know you." He was quiet for a moment, then added, "It struck me today that you're becoming part of Stockton, not just the ranch. People are starting to see you as someone who belongs here." The observation resonated with Cassandra's own feelings. "It's a strange and wonderful thing," she admitted. "When I first arrived, I felt so completely adrift. Now I find myself thinking of this place as home." Levi's hand found hers in the gathering darkness. "I'm glad," he said simply, but the pressure of his fingers conveyed far more than the words alone. The journey to Sonora to visit Levi's sister and her new baby took place the day after Christmas. The town, nestled in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada, was a bustling community that had grown from its gold rush origins into an established center for both mining and agriculture. Martha and her husband Daniel owned a prosperous orchard on the outskirts, their home a comfortable two-story structure surrounded by neat rows of dormant fruit trees. Martha Carson Wilson proved to be a feminine version of her brother, tall and direct, with the same warm eyes and ready smile. She welcomed Cassandra with genuine enthusiasm, embracing her as though they were already family. "So you're the woman who's finally captured my brother's heart," she said, studying Cassandra with frank approval. "I was beginning to think he'd spend his life married only to that ranch of his." "Martha," Levi protested, though without real annoyance, "don't embarrass Cassandra before she's even had a chance to set down her bag." His sister laughed, linking her arm through Cassandra's. "Come meet your nephew." He's just woken from his nap and is in a pleasant mood for the moment, though that could change at any minute. Baby James was indeed in an agreeable state when they entered the nursery, his tiny face scrunched in what might have been a smile as Martha lifted him from his cradle. Watching Levi hold his nephew for the first time, his large hands cradling the infant with exquisite care, Cassandra felt a flutter of emotion that surprised her with its intensity. "He's beautiful, Martha," she said sincerely. "You must be very proud." "Exhausted and proud in equal measure," Martha replied with a tired smile. "Though Daniel is a wonderful father and does his share of the midnight walking." When it was Cassandra's turn to hold the baby, she took him gently, marveling at his tiny perfection. James gazed up at her with unfocused eyes, his little fist waving in the air before finding its way to his mouth. "You look natural with a baby in your arms," Martha observed casually, though her glance at her brother was anything but subtle. Levi cleared his throat, a flush rising to his cheeks. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves, Martha." His sister's laugh was unrepentant. "Who said I was getting ahead of anything? I was merely making an observation." The visit lasted 3 days, during which Cassandra and Martha developed a warm rapport. On the afternoon before their departure, the two women sat in the cozy parlor while Daniel showed Levi some improvements he was planning for the orchard's irrigation system. "I want you to know how happy I am that Levi has found you," Martha said as they worked on mending together, baby James sleeping peacefully in his cradle nearby. "I've worried about him being alone at the ranch, especially since Mother passed." "He's hardly alone," Cassandra pointed out. "The ranch hands, Mrs. Peterson. That's not the same as having someone who truly shares his life," Martha replied. "Someone who understands him." She set aside her sewing to look directly at Cassandra. "I can see that you do. Understand him, you see past his reserve to the heart of him." Touched by the observation, Cassandra nodded. "He's a remarkable man. I count myself fortunate that he found me that day. Providence, I'd call it." Martha smiled. "Our mother always said that God brings the right people into our lives at the right time, even if we don't recognize it as such in the moment." The conversation shifted to other topics, but Martha's words lingered in Cassandra's thoughts long after, resonating with her own reflections on the unlikely series of events that had brought her to Carson Ranch and to Levi. The journey back to Stockton was undertaken in contemplative silence, both travelers absorbed in thoughts of the visit and what it might mean for their future. It wasn't until they were within sight of the ranch that Levi finally spoke. "Martha likes you very much," he said, "though I expect you gathered that yourself." "I like her too," Cassandra replied. "You're fortunate to have such a loving family." "I am." He hesitated, then added, "I hope you felt welcomed among us." "Very much so." She turned to look at him directly. "Your family has been kinder to me than I could have imagined. It means a great deal." Levi's expression softened as he reached for her hand. "You belong with us, Cassandra. I hope you know that." The simple statement, offered without dramatic declaration or embellishment, touched her deeply. In the weeks that followed, as winter gradually yielded to early signs of spring, those words echoed in her heart, reinforcing the growing certainty of where her future lay. January passed in a blur of ranch work and increasingly confident courtship. Levi, having declared his intentions, no longer hesitated to show his affection within the bounds of propriety. Their evenings by the fire often ended with gentle kisses that grew gradually more passionate as their mutual trust deepened. February brought preparations for spring planting and the first of the season's calves. Cassandra found herself drawn more directly into the daily operations of the ranch, accompanying Levi on his rounds whenever her office duties permitted. She developed a particular interest in the horses, spending time in the stables learning about their care and training. "You have a natural way with them," Levi observed one afternoon as she successfully approached a nervous mare that had previously shied away from strangers. "They sense your calm. I never had much opportunity to be around horses in Boston," she replied, gently stroking the mare's velvet nose. "But I find them fascinating, so powerful, yet so sensitive. Like people in that way," Levi remarked. "The strongest among us often have the most sensitive hearts." Their gazes met over the mare's back, mutual understanding passing between them without need for further words. By early March, signs of spring were unmistakable. Wildflowers began appearing in the meadows, trees showed the first hints of budding leaves, and the days lengthened noticeably. On a particularly mild Sunday, Levi suggested a picnic by the creek that ran through the eastern part of his property. "The wild irises should be blooming there," he said, "and it's a spot I'd like to share with you." The location proved to be a small clearing beside a gentle bend in the creek, where the water pooled before continuing its journey downhill. As Levi had predicted, purple wild irises dotted the banks, interspersed with yellow buttercups and white clover. Ancient oak trees provided dappled shade, their massive branches reaching skyward. "This place is magical," Cassandra said as Levi spread a blanket on a grassy area near the water. "Have you come here often?" "Since I was a boy," he replied, setting down the basket Mrs. Peterson had prepared for them. "It was my secret place when I needed thinking time. My stepfather found me here once after I'd run away following an argument. Instead of scolding me, he sat right where we are now and told me that a man needs a place where he can hear his own thoughts clearly." "Wise advice," Cassandra commented, settling on the blanket and arranging her skirts. "He was full of it." Levi sat beside her, closer than propriety might strictly allow, but with the comfortable familiarity they had developed. "I've made some of my most important decisions in this spot." They ate at a leisurely pace, enjoying the simple fare and the peaceful surroundings. Afterward, they walked along the creek, gathering wildflowers and watching small fish dart in the clear water. When they returned to the blanket, Levi seemed unusually pensive. "What are you thinking?" Cassandra asked, reaching to touch his arm lightly. He covered her hand with his own, his expression serious but tender. "I'm thinking that I love you, Cassandra Turner." The words, though not entirely unexpected given the course of their relationship, still caused her breath to catch. "Levi, I know it's been only a few months," he continued, turning to face her fully. "But in that time, you've become essential to me in ways I never imagined possible. I love your intelligence, your courage, your kindness. I love the way you see beauty in ordinary things and find practical solutions to complex problems. I love who I am when I'm with you, a better man than I was before." Tears pricked Cassandra's eyes at the heartfelt declaration. "I love you too," she said simply. "You restored my faith when I had lost it, not just in others, but in myself. You saw worth in me when I felt worthless, offered hope when I had none. How could I not love you for that?" Levi's smile was radiant as he leaned forward to kiss her, one hand gently cradling her face. The kiss was deeper and more passionate than their previous embraces, a physical expression of the love they had just declared. When they finally parted, both were breathless, their faces flushed with emotion and desire. "I have something else to say," Levi said after a moment, his voice husky. "Another reason I wanted to bring you to this particular spot today." "Oh!" Cassandra's pulse quickened at the intensity in his eyes. Levi reached into his pocket and withdrew a small object that glinted in the dappled sunlight. Taking her left hand in his, he held up a ring, a delicate gold band set with a single modest diamond flanked by two smaller sapphires. "Cassandra Turner, I love you with all my heart. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Though she had begun to hope for this moment, the reality of it still left her momentarily speechless. Joy welled up from the depths of her soul, bringing fresh tears to her eyes. "Yes," she whispered, then more strongly, "Yes, Levi, I would be honored to be your wife." With hands that trembled slightly, Levi slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, the stones catching the light as Cassandra extended her hand to admire it. "It was my mother's," he explained. "My stepfather gave it to her on their wedding day. Martha has her mother's ring from her first marriage to my father, so she wanted me to have this one for." He paused, a flush rising to his cheeks. "For when I found the right woman to give it to." "It's beautiful," Cassandra said, deeply touched by the family connection. "I'll treasure it always." Their kiss this time was a sealing of the promise between them, tender yet passionate. When they finally broke apart, Levi rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed as though savoring the moment. "When?" he asked simply. "When would you like to be married?" Cassandra replied, her heart so full she could scarcely believe it wouldn't burst from happiness. "Tomorrow, if it were possible," he said with a laugh. "But I suppose we should allow some time for proper arrangements." They settled on early May, when the spring roundup would be complete and before the summer heat arrived in full force. It would be a small ceremony at the church in Stockton, followed by a celebration at the ranch for friends, neighbors, and the ranch hands who had become Cassandra's extended family. As they packed up their picnic and prepared to return to the house, Cassandra paused for one last look at the peaceful clearing by the creek. "Thank you for sharing this place with me," she said. "I understand now why it's special to you." Levi's arm circled her waist as he stood beside her. "It's even more special now," he replied. "Now it's where our future together truly began." The weeks leading up to the wedding passed in a flurry of preparations. News of their engagement spread quickly through Stockton, met with general approval and some good-natured teasing about how Levi Carson had finally been roped and branded by the Eastern schoolteacher. Victoria Hargrove made a point of becoming engaged herself to a wealthy timber merchant from Sacramento, an announcement that seemed timed to diminish the attention given to Levi and Cassandra's upcoming nuptials, but actually had little effect. Martha traveled from Sonora to help with wedding arrangements, bringing baby James with her while her husband remained to manage the orchard. The two women spent long hours planning, sewing, and preparing the house for its new status as a married couple's home. "We should redecorate the main bedroom," Martha suggested as they reviewed the household inventory. "Mother's tastes were lovely, but perhaps a bit outdated now. You'll want to put your own touch on the space." Cassandra, who had continued to occupy the guest room during her engagement despite Mrs. Peterson's reduced supervisory presence, found herself blushing at the thought of sharing Levi's bedroom. "I wouldn't want to erase your mother's influence from the house," she protested mildly. "Levi cherishes her memory." "He cherishes you more," Martha replied with certainty. "Besides, marriage is about creating something new together, not preserving the past exactly as it was." In the end, they compromised by keeping the solid oak furniture that had belonged to Levi's parents while updating the linens, curtains, and some smaller decorative items to reflect Cassandra's preferences for cleaner lines and brighter colors. Levi, for his part, threw himself into completing projects around the ranch that had been on his list for months. He repaired the front porch, built new shelves in the kitchen, and with the help of his hands, constructed a small gazebo in the garden where Sarah Carson had once grown roses. "For summer evenings," he explained when Cassandra questioned the new addition. "A place where we can watch the sunset together." The wedding dress was a collaborative creation fabric purchased in Stockton, pattern adapted from a fashion plate in a magazine Martha had brought, and construction shared between Cassandra, Martha, and Mrs. Peterson, whose skilled fingers managed the most intricate details. The result was a gown of ivory silk with delicate lace trim at the modest neckline and cuffs, its lines simple but elegant. "You look absolutely beautiful," Martha declared at the final fitting, her eyes suspiciously bright. "My brother won't know what hit him." The night before the wedding, Cassandra found herself unable to sleep, a mixture of excitement and reflection keeping her awake. She slipped downstairs, intending to make a cup of tea, only to find Levi similarly restless, sitting at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked with a soft smile, rising to pull out a chair for her. "Too many thoughts," she admitted, accepting the seat. "Happy ones, but persistent nonetheless." "Same." He poured a cup of tea for her from the pot he had apparently already prepared, anticipating her preference. "I keep thinking about how much has changed since I found you in the barn. How empty this house was before you came into it. And how lost I was before you found me," she added, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. "It seems almost unbelievable that less than 6 months have passed since that evening." "Some things don't require time to be certain," Levi said, reaching across the table to touch her hand. "Some things you just know in your heart and soul." Their eyes met in the soft lamplight, mutual understanding passing between them. Tomorrow they would speak their vows before God and their community, but in this quiet moment, they were already bound by something deeper than words could express. "I should go back upstairs," Cassandra said reluctantly after they had sat in companionable silence for a time. "Martha would be scandalized if she found us alone together the night before the wedding." Levi's chuckle was low and warm. "My sister has become quite the guardian of propriety now that she's a respectable matron. Hard to reconcile with the girl who once climbed out her bedroom window to attend a dance her parents had forbidden." "She did not," Cassandra exclaimed in delighted disbelief. "Ask her about it sometime after we're safely married. I'd rather not have her murder me before the ceremony." Their laughter, soft and intimate in the quiet house, sealed the moment in Cassandra's memory, one final private exchange before they became husband and wife. The wedding day dawned clear and perfect, with just enough breeze to keep the May sunshine from becoming too warm. The small church in Stockton was filled to capacity with friends, neighbors, and well-wishers from throughout the county. Flowers gathered from the ranch and neighboring properties decorated the altar and pews, their fragrance filling the simple space. Martha served as Cassandra's attendant, while Daniel, who had arrived the previous day with their now 5-month-old son, stood beside Levi. The ceremony itself was traditional and deeply moving, the elderly minister speaking of love's endurance and the sacred bond of marriage with genuine conviction. When it came time to exchange their vows, Levi's voice rang clear and unwavering as he promised to love, honor, and cherish Cassandra for all the days of their life together. Cassandra, her heart so full she feared it might overflow, returned those sacred promises with equal certainty. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the minister declared, his weathered face creased in a broad smile. "What God has joined together, let no man put asunder." He nodded to Levi. "You may kiss your bride." The kiss that sealed their union was brief but tender, mindful of their public setting yet expressive of the deep love they shared. As they turned to face their friends as Mr. and Mrs. Levi Carson, the church erupted in applause and cheers, the genuine goodwill of the community surrounding them like a blessing. The celebration at the ranch afterward was joyous and relaxed, with tables set up in the yard much as they had been for Thanksgiving, though now decorated with ribbons and flowers in celebration. Food was plentiful, music provided by local musicians who played with enthusiastic if not always perfect skill, and dancing continued well into the evening. As twilight descended, lanterns were lit around the yard, casting a golden glow over the festivities. Cassandra, who had changed from her wedding gown into a simpler blue dress for the dancing, found a moment of quiet with her new husband near the edge of the gathering. "Happy, Mrs. Carson?" Levi asked, his arm circling her waist as they watched their guests enjoying themselves. "Completely," she assured him, leaning into his embrace. Though it still seems strange to hear myself called that. You'll have a lifetime to get used to it, he promised, pressing a kiss to her temple. Later that night, when the last guests had departed and the ranch was finally still, Cassandra stood in what was now their bedroom, nervous anticipation fluttering in her stomach. The room had been transformed with fresh linens, new curtains, and vases of flowers placed on the dresser and bedside tables. Candles cast a warm, intimate light over the space. When Levi entered, closing the door softly behind him, the look in his eyes tender, reverent, and unmistakably desiring calmed her nervousness. This was Levi, her husband, the man who had seen her at her most vulnerable and still found her worthy of love. With him, she had nothing to fear. "You are so beautiful," he said, crossing to where she stood. "Today, now, always." "I love you," she replied simply, reaching up to touch his face. Their first night together as husband and wife was a discovery of new intimacy, gentle passion building to deeper connection as they learned each other's bodies with the same care they had taken in learning each other's hearts. Afterward, lying in Levi's arms as moonlight filtered through the curtains, Cassandra felt a sense of completion and rightness that she had never known before. "I never imagined I could be this happy," she whispered against his chest, where his heart beat strong and steady beneath her ear. His arms tightened around her. "Nor I," he admitted. "When I found you that evening in the barn, I thought I was offering shelter to someone in need. I had no idea you would become my shelter, my home." The days and weeks that followed settled into a new pattern, the familiar routine of ranch life now enriched by their shared intimacy and mutual support. Spring ripened into summer, bringing long days of warmth and productivity. The ranch prospered under their combined care, Cassandra's organizational skills complementing Levi's practical knowledge and vision. In August, they traveled to Sonora again to celebrate baby James's christening, where Levi proudly served as godfather. Watching him with his nephew, now a chubby, laughing infant, Cassandra felt a yearning she had not allowed herself to acknowledge fully before. "Do you want children?" she asked that night as they prepared for bed in the guest room of Martha and Daniel's home. Levi paused in the act of removing his shirt, his expression softening. "Very much," he admitted. "But only if you do as well. I wouldn't want you to feel pressured." "I do want them," she assured him, moving to stand before him. "Our children, with your kind eyes and stubborn chin." His laugh was tender as he drew her into his arms. "And your intelligence and courage. And perhaps some qualities entirely their own," she added, smiling up at him. By the time autumn returned to Stockton, painting the countryside in golds and russets, Cassandra's suspicions were confirmed she was expecting their first child, due to arrive in the early spring. When she shared the news with Levi, his joy was boundless. He lifted her in a careful embrace, his laughter mingling with tears of happiness. "A baby," he said in wonder, gently setting her back on her feet but keeping his hands at her waist. "Our baby. Our family," she corrected, covering his hands with her own. "The one we've both been waiting for." On a clear day in late October, as the first anniversary of their meeting approached, Levi suggested they ride out to a particular hillside where the trees were displaying their most vibrant autumn colors. They picnicked under an ancient oak, reminiscing about the twists of fate that had brought them together. "Do you ever think about what might have happened if you hadn't decided to take shelter in my barn that evening?" Levi asked as they sat side by side, watching the play of sunlight through the golden leaves above them. "Sometimes," Cassandra admitted, her hand resting on the slight swell of her belly where their child grew. "But I prefer to think it was more than mere chance. As your mother used to say, perhaps God brings the right people into our lives at the right time." Levi covered her hand with his own, his expression thoughtful. "I believe she was right about that," Some things are meant to be, even if the path to them isn't what we expected. As they rode back to the ranch in the mellow afternoon light, Cassandra reflected on the journey that had brought her from tearful despair in a stranger's barn to this moment of profound contentment and hope. The locket Levi had given her at their first Christmas still hung around her neck, now containing a small photograph of him on one side and a lock of his hair on the other, tangible reminders of the love that had transformed her life. Carson Ranch spread before them as they crested the final hill, the house and outbuildings bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun. It was no longer simply a place of employment or shelter. It was home in the deepest sense, the physical embodiment of the life they were building together. "Race you to the barn?" Levi suggested with a boyish grin, clearly noting her contemplative mood. Cassandra laughed, gathering her reins. "Only if you're prepared to lose to a pregnant woman," she teased back. They galloped down the hill side by side. Their laughter carried on the autumn breeze, two people who had found in each other not just love, but the rarest gift of all, a place to truly belong. The following April, as wildflowers once again carpeted the meadows of Carson Ranch and new leaves unfurled on the ancient oaks, Cassandra gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him William James Carson, honoring both Cassandra's father and Levi's beloved stepfather. Watching Levi cradle their son with the same tender care he had once shown a weeping stranger, Cassandra's heart overflowed with gratitude for the unexpected path that had led her to this moment of perfect joy. From the depths of despair in a barn on an autumn evening to the heights of happiness in the home they had created together, their journey had been one of love's transformative power, a power that would continue to shape their lives and the lives of their children for all the years to come.